Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight, I have a very special video for you indeed. Not only are we going to be looking at demonic possessions, one of my all-time favourite topics, but the first story has a lot of extra details, because I have teamed up with my friend Briefcase. We've looked at the case, and he has allowed me to narrate on his channel the in-detailed case of the very first story. So, once you're done with this video, be sure to go over to listen to me tell you all about this first story in a lot of detail. I'm sure you'll very much enjoy it, especially after you've heard it anyway. Don't forget, I do post nightly, so be sure to press the subscribe button, that little bell icon, and drop a like when you're done. But anyway, without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I have a story that happened to someone I knew personally for a long time. Let me take you back. I lived in Mexico when I was younger. Way younger. My family, though, moved to Canada shortly after the events that transpired. We lived in a city called Querétaro. I remember it quite fondly. It was a really pretty place, and very different to Canada. We sometimes go back, but not often, as our family since then has spread out, and we don't have many ties to that place anymore, save the occasional friend. This story, as I said, isn't my own. It's about one of my old school friends' mother. My friend was called Claudia Maria. Now, her mother, who was also called Claudia, was a pretty normal lady. I actually went round her house a few times to play when we were small. Things were different back then. It was normal to go to other people's houses and play. And the community was very welcoming, inviting, and it wasn't remotely dangerous. At least, that's how it felt when I was a kid. I remember that her mum taught at our school. She was a teacher of religion, and I think catechism as well. And that's when things started to get strange. Please bear in mind that everything you're about to hear has been told to me by my friend, and is all from a second-hand perspective. I remember the day that Claudia came in very upset. Me, being one of her closest friends, asked her what was wrong, and she told me that things weren't going great between her mum and dad. Apparently there were some problems. I'd met her dad. He was nice. And she never really went into detail much. But she said that going to the house was her least favourite part of the day. They'd always be arguing and fighting, and they could never agree on anything. He'd always end up sleeping on the sofa, and they just couldn't handle each other at all. Things escalated. And, of course, I think they ended up separating and eventually divorcing. Point being though, once her father left, she told me that the house felt a lot better, for a little while anyway. Everything started to look up. Her parents were talking. I think they were going to some kind of counsellor to get things back on track maybe, although in the end I don't think it worked out. But she felt pretty good. She told me that when she came back home, she felt really light and fluffy. At least that's how she put it. But that one day, everything changed. Her home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt tainted and dark. And it's almost like all the happiness in the world had been sucked out. And coming home had again been the worst feeling ever. Although she wasn't sure why. Her and her two siblings got home after her mum brought them. And her mum was okay. She was quite cheery. But it was from that day that she started noticing that her mother was going downhill. She started talking to herself, muttering in her sleep. She told me that there was one occasion where she woke up to get a glass of water, and she could hear her mum saying something in her room. Bear in mind, it was stupid o'clock, late at night. She could hear what she thought was mumbling, maybe whispering, maybe even crying. As she carefully approached her mum's door, she cracked it open a little bit and heard her mother talking to herself. Unsure whether to proceed or not, in saying if she was all right, or if she was just doing something personal, she went to fetch her water and went back to bed. The reason I remember this part so well is because it really freaked me out when she told me the next day at school. This wasn't an isolated incident. She said that on other occasions, not even at night anymore, during the day, she'd have full-blown arguments with herself. It didn't matter that her kids were around. She started going crazy. At some points, she had to calm down her siblings because they started to cry, because they couldn't make sense of why their mother was behaving in that way. One occasion, she was arguing with herself whilst cooking dinner, and threw the pot of boiling water at the kitchen table, very near to where they were sitting. Understandably, they all cried and ran upstairs and wanted to see their dad, but he didn't live there. Originally, they all thought that something was very wrong with their mum. Maybe she was going crazy because of the divorce. They kind of understood that. But then, there was a change. On one occasion, they were all just downstairs playing a game, save the mum who was upstairs, when all of a sudden, a vase was thrown across the room. They didn't see it get thrown, but they heard the sound and saw that the vase had been flung from across the room. She said that there was no way that that vase could have moved. It wasn't your standard typical vase. It was a heavy clay vase. Seriously, she said that she tried to pick it up before when her mum made her clean, and that she couldn't do it. The amount of force required to move it was tremendous. But then to propel it across a room? She didn't even think her mum and dad combined would be able to do that, and that thoroughly creeped her out. But what annoyed her the most was that her mother blamed her, and that she had to clean it up. It was also around this time that rumours were flying about, that her mother was having an affair with the priest in the school. This was getting very serious. One day, when her mother was out getting eggs in the shop, she was left looking after her two siblings, when all of a sudden, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from one of the upstairs rooms. They ran outside into the garden and started to cry. When their mother got home, she ran and wanted to know what was wrong with them, and she told their mum that weird stuff had been happening, and that they heard a scream coming from upstairs. Her mother took them up to investigate, and collectively, they found nothing. Things at home, of course, got worse and worse. She'd come to school looking tired, like she'd barely slept. Sometimes she wouldn't even bother telling me what happened. Other times she'd tell me that she felt her pillows or her bed sheets be moved in the middle of the night, that she'd get up and that her siblings would be asleep, and that there'd be nothing there. Other times she'd tell me that there would be screams in the house, and that she'd always be too scared to move, and that there was even one point where she swore she saw a dark figure looming in the hallway. She was too afraid to approach it. Everything culminated quite quickly though. Her mother kept getting worse and worse, and on the last day I saw her, we were just chatting at school towards the end of the day, about homework and the like. and she told me that she couldn't wait until our summer break because she really wanted to sleep more during the day. I laughed at that. But anyway, I didn't think much of it at the time. That night, like most nights, my mom picked me up from school and I went home. I had my nightly routine of playing with my sister and reading a book before going to sleep. I slept soundly that night, but my friend Claudia did not. For you see, that was the last time I ever saw my friend. As it turns out, her routine that night was completely different. She got home from school, and her mother, from what the reports gather, was a little bit psychotic. They had their food, and in the evening, they went to bed. However, during the middle of the night, their mother started going a little bit crazy. She started hearing the voices again. Voices apparently in the sound of the priest who she had allegedly been having an affair with. Apparently, the voices in her mind were telling her to kill, and she tried calling one of her friends on the phone. When she did, her friend told her to go to sleep and that they'd chat in the morning. That part always made me sad, because maybe if she'd gone round, maybe if that friend had done something else, things would be different. But of course, it's hard to ask that of a person when they wake up in the middle of the night. The story doesn't end well. The mother went downstairs, fetched 3 knives, and started attacking her children. As you've probably guessed, she ended up killing all 3, with different knives for dramatic effect. And when they found out in the morning that all 3 children were dead, they asked her why she did it. And when they found out a while later, she said that it had been voices. Now, the people close to her and her family thought it was a demon. I wasn't the only person that my friend Claudia spoke to. I wasn't the only one who was aware that something dark could be in the house, or at least, that's what I have been told. Some say she was just psychotic. I guess I'll never know. The truth is though, regardless of what it really was, it will never bring back the fact that my friend was killed. The fact that it completely corrupted the community. It actually made some of us leave forever, me and my family included. Just a sad, sad loss of life. If my friends are out there, somewhere in the ether, I hope that they're well, and that their souls remain happy after being butchered in the most horrific way by a member of their own family. And just so that you know, her mother ended up going to prison. I've been wanting to share this story for quite a while. A few years ago, I was part of a group of female friends. One of these girls, Mariana, had inherited her recently deceased grandparents' mill/manor and used it to organize small vacations with this group of friends. We would stay for a week, party, have fun, and get drunk every night. Back then, me and my girlfriend were really into paranormal stuff. We decided to ask the other girls if they wanted to do a Ouija session. Some of them said yes. So we went into an abandoned room in the manor/mill and started a session. We used several pieces of paper, on which were written letters and numbers, hello, yes, no, and goodbye. We used a glass, and I previously tried to be the maître de séance, I think that's how you pronounce it, without receiving any paranormal response. My girlfriend, Marina, decided to do it. So it was me, Marina, Leia, Mariana, Ayla, Clara, and Alicia. Lots of A's. The room was dark. We had turned off all the electronic devices and had a candle lit. The door was locked, and it was almost pitch black. So each of us put a finger on the glass. We properly started the seance, and the room was creepy and silent before the seance started. Quite quickly, at some point, we started hearing strange noises, like something running on the walls. Not in the walls, not some kind of animal, just small, strange noises all around us. We started getting an answer. To be short, apparently we were talking to a Brazilian man with a strange name, pronounced Baose, whose partner was killed by his father. It was a nice conversation. We had a very positive vibe, and there was a warm feeling in the air. After this seance, we decided to conduct another one, because we were very confident of the previous one. But shit went downhill really quick. We heard the same thing, not a single noise, but when the seance started, the weird noises around began again. The spirit didn't want to answer the question, are you a good or bad spirit? The candle was doing weird stuff, and the atmosphere was completely different. Something was really heavy and depressive. It was during this same seance, because the spirit wasn't really talkative. We asked him if someone at the table was annoying him, and he said and told Ayla to leave, because she was laughing the whole time. Then at one point, the spirit didn't answer our question at all, and just pointed out letters at random, very, very quickly. We stopped the seance by telling him thank you, but we would like to end it, and ask him to go back to where he came from. We end the seance, but there is still a lot of tension, and we try to laugh to shake off the feeling. So my ex-girlfriend Marina is still sitting at the table looking at it, and she tells us, in a very serious tone, that it's still here. We freak out, but end the seance once again. Then we go back to the living room, and my friends start drinking and partying. But I notice that my girlfriend's behavior is really odd. She looks distant or distracted. Then she starts giving a really chilling look to Ayla as she passes by. A look that clearly said, I'm going to kill you. It scared the shit out of me, and I knew it wasn't her. So I tried to get my shit together and think of something to do. I asked the other girls to bring me religious objects, as there were a lot of them in the manor house/mill, because Mariana's grandparents were strong believers. So I have a cross and a small statue of the Virgin Mary, and I tried to conduct an exorcism of sorts, saying prayers and trying to make her repeat it, saying things like, the power of Christ compels you. It sounds incredibly ridiculous now, but I was completely panicked at the time. At one point, my girlfriend starts fainting, and then asks what happened. A year or two after this, my ex-girlfriend ended up in a psychiatric hospital for teenagers for a few months. We never spoke about it again. I don't know if she lied, but I can't explain the noises and the feelings and the fact that it wasn't just me but everyone. I'm not sure what to believe, to be honest. I am glad that we managed to get whatever was or might have been inside her out, and that she regained her normality shortly after. Either way, one thing was confirmed. We never played with Ouija boards again, makeshift or not. Sometimes, the monsters we create in our minds are indistinguishable from reality. But sometimes, those monsters are merely waiting to take form in our most terrifying versions of what stalks from the dark corners of our minds. The day I returned home from the divorce lawyer was both an exhilarating and exhausting end to my 12-year marriage. My biggest regret? was that I would have to sell the house my husband and I owned. I had lived in the house, or beside it, since I was 10 years old. When my parents decided to sell the house, I worked night and day to acquire the 20% down payment so that I could buy it. This house had a sentimental hold on me, and perhaps another kind of hold. In my past, my father, my best friend, and my husband had all experienced a terrifying phenomenon. Each had claimed to have been awoken by the smothering feeling of someone on their chest and large hands around their neck. They described it as demonic. A tall, dark man, cloaked in heavy clothing and a thickly brimmed hat. As these events occurred, each one had never heard the tale of the other's experience. It was indeed hair-raising for each to have the same account as the other, of the tall, dark man. Other than their experience, the only common denominator in their stories was each one had done something to upset me on the eve of their experience. Now, as I said, I had lived in that house since I was 10 years old, and I had never experienced anything of the sort. This being the 1970s, I shrugged it off as too many demon movies in our American culture. Still, I didn't worry, as it seemed I had a friend in this entity. It had, after all, attacked only those whom had done something to upset me. On the day I found myself coming down off an adrenaline rush and getting very sleepy, my children were both in school and would not be home for hours. So I stretched myself out on the sofa, tucked the pillow behind my head, and quickly drifted off to sleep. I began to rouse with the feeling that something, or someone very heavy, was on top of me. I briefly opened my eyes halfway, then quickly shut them, because I could not make my mind deal with what I saw. Unlike the others in this house, my experience was happening in broad daylight, in a room with a large picture window. I lay there paralyzed in fear. I could hear my heart beat in my ears. The smell was putrid, like sewage, rotten fish, and sulfur. And this time, it was lying body to body stretched out across me. I could feel the hot breath on my neck. I very slightly opened my eyes, hoping they still appeared closed to this monster. Its horrid eyes were staring at me, hazel in colour and reptilian in shape. Its skin the colour of aging tobacco, somewhere between green and brown. The forehead was short and sloped backwards, while the mouth was very large and sharp. Its nose, a long and large protrusion, curled back at the nostrils, like the tube of a wind instrument. Its body was thick and seemed to be entirely muscle, yet it was no more than 3.5 feet in length. The torso, covered in heavy scales, that were a deeper, darker greenish brown, and emitted the oily odour. My mind had been so preoccupied with analysing this predatory entity that I had neglected to realise its intent. That's when I felt a large, thick penis trying to force its way inside me. In utter terror, I tried to fight back, but I could not begin to bulge its thick, muscular body, weighing at least 300 pounds. My breath was being crushed out of me, and I could only imagine what damage its enormous and disgusting member could do. One saving thought crossed my mind, and for 1 second I realised I did have a power source stronger than this demon. I summoned my last breath, and strength in the voice of words, and commanded that in the name of Jesus Christ it be gone. Suddenly, as if something had physically lifted this thick, heavy monster off me, it hurled through the air and landed feet away from me. Now I could both see the physical apparition of this demon and its reflection on the television near me. I sat up, trying to breathe, and that's when we locked eyes, each of us with a fierce determination. This seemed to last an eternity, as I watched it simply vanish into thin air. All these many years later, I have searched for an answer, with whatever resources were available. Nearly 20 years after that fact, I began to find similar stories on the internet. Like me, each person swearing that they were not sleeping, as everything in the room was as is in reality, and not being altered by a dream. My life after this experience changed forever. There's not a day that goes by that I don't expect the demon to return in the flesh. For years, I was terrified by that prospect. But now I am older, wiser, and now it is he that should be very afraid of me. Before I tell you about this, I want you all to know that I took it upon myself to be checked for any medical or mental problems first. I have been tested for seizures as well as sleep paralysis. The tests have always come back negative for both. Nor do I suffer from schizophrenia or personality disorders of any kind. I've had 3 or 4 full battery psychological evaluations done to me. I do suffer from anxiety, chronic depression, and PTSD. Why would I have all of these tests done, you'll ask? Because I felt like I was going crazy. I think I could have accepted that then for what it really was. People say it's a gift, but I feel like it's a curse too. I'm from the South. As a child, religion has always been a part of my life. Living in the Bible Belt, you know, with brimstone Baptist preachers who'll yell at you when they're preaching because, well, I really think they felt that was what they could do to instill in one's mind. But this is important to remember, because other than God and Jesus themselves, this saved my family and my own life. Anyway, this is my full, true testimony of what I believe to be my first-hand experience with a demonic possession. I remember my first encounter with a demon. I was age 14 or 15, though I can't remember it before or after the shooting my family and I were in. Both of them happened in Berwick, Maine, but that's an entirely different experience that I will share with you all another day. Even though it's been over 25 years now, I can still remember it just as if it were yesterday. I've always been terrified of the dark, you see. I still am, and I still sleep with the light on, and I probably always will until the day I die. The apartment we lived in looked kind of like a house, but it had 4 or 5 doors. Ours was the last one on the right facing the building. You walk into the living room first, go straight, and you enter the kitchen. To the left, up 1 step, the bathroom. Through the kitchen, go through the doorway, and there was my brother's room. And then through the last doorway, my room. Look to the left, it was the door to go back out. So I was in my room laying on my right side, towards the nightlight on my bed. There were 2 entrances and exits, not on the same wall. There was a little corner, which both walls met, one leading to my brother's room, and one leading outside. As I was laying there trying to relax and winding down for the day, I got this bad feeling, like I wasn't alone. I could feel another presence in the room with me. Then something was blocking the nightlight. We all know, even if your eyes are closed, you can still see when something blocks the light. It was standing in the corner between both exits. I was trapped in there with it, and I knew that. I couldn't bring myself to open my eyes. I was terrified. I froze, just laying there helpless. Then I could hear it breathing. As it breathed in and out, its long, drawn and deep breaths, I had this overwhelming feeling of impending doom. It stood there for a few minutes, though it seemed like forever as I was frozen in fear. The sound coming out of its mouth was this unearthly growl that I've never heard before, and all of a sudden it came running across the room. As it was looming over my small, frightened frame, I could feel the warmth of its breath hit my face. The smell was like decay, rotting flesh, with the pungent smell of sulfur. It was horrible. I wanted to throw up. My whole body was shaking, my breathing labored with every uneven breath. However, I still couldn't bring myself to open my eyes, to face the demon. I honestly couldn't tell how long it was standing there. Then it made another unearthly growl, as I felt it jump inside my body. I tried screaming for help. I moved to run away, but to no avail. It was futile. It had me right where it wanted me. 1,000 thoughts were running through my mind at once. I didn't know what to do at first. Then it dawned on me, the only one who could help me was God. So I started to pray, and I prayed for the Holy Spirit to assist me, because in my mind, I couldn't speak. It was like my vocal cords were paralyzed, and I could physically feel the pressure on my neck as it had me pinned down. I continued to pray and started to feel its hold on me withering. But the second I stopped praying, it hit me even harder than before, like it was coming back for me with a vengeance. Then I felt the most terrifying feeling in the world. I could start feel my upper body rise. I was getting up out of the bed. The thoughts of what the demon was going to do to me still terrifies me to this day. I could feel and see its thoughts, what it was going to do to my family. I felt the hatred and sheer pleasure of what it was planning to do. I was crying inside, feeling so defeated. I still can't speak of the horrific visions I saw. It was the most disturbing vision I had ever seen in my 15-year-old mind. Honestly, it brings me to tears just thinking about it. It's like tearing my heart out all over again. I love my family, and I would never hurt anyone. I knew if I didn't fight it off, my family would be gone, physically, by my own hands. And so I prayed to God for help. And what I did next, I don't know where it came from. This strength washed over me, and I almost felt like God himself was within me. I screamed in my head with every fiber of my being, of my soul. The fear that I once had was now turned into raw determination. Losing this battle in my body wasn't an option. I had to protect my family regardless of the cost, regardless of my own life. And I screamed as loudly as I could. And as quickly as it started, it stopped. I couldn't feel the presence any longer. And once I realized that I wasn't pinned, I leapt out of bed and ran as fast as I could through my brother's room and into the living room, where my mother lay sleeping. I was crying uncontrollably, and at this point my mother woke up. She asked me what was wrong, and I honestly couldn't tell her. The only words I could muster were, I had a very bad nightmare. Truth be told, I didn't think she would believe me. I never slept in that room again. I slept in the living room until we finally moved. I still to this day have never spoken a word of this to my mother, and I never will. Anyone who has ever dealt with possession of any kind knows that it changes your life forever. Even though it's gone, it leaves a mark on you. Feeling your soul will forever be unclean. Well, at least it feels that way to me. I've since been baptized again, though to this day I continue to be personally attacked. It's not as bad as that night. I've been scratched, bruised, and bitten. Almost pulled out of bed several times as well. I've been jumped, been attacked in my dreams, although that's another experience I'll share with you another time. And even though, throughout all of this, I will forever keep my faith. I talk to my pastor asking him why these things are happening to me, and he tells me I have something they want or fear what I have inside me. If it's my soul they want, they can't have it. And to the demon who tried taking everything I love away from me, you try that shit ever again, you shall feel my wrath. I will stop at nothing to protect my family and the people I love. Some way or somehow, I will find a way to send you back to hell where you belong. Make no mistake of it. When I was in elementary school, I started getting the worst migraines I've ever felt. One morning, I woke up for school and I had sleep paralysis and couldn't move. I was on my side facing my dorm, and this man walked in. I still remember his horrific face too, just twisted and grotesque. He didn't say anything, but what I assume were his lips were moving. He had two big guns, like M16s or something, and he just started shooting at me. I felt every bullet rip through my body, and I could feel my lungs depleting. I tried so hard to breathe, but couldn't. I tried so hard until I realized that I was going to die no matter what. This was the end. No screaming for help, no running, just helpless submission to the inevitable. Right when I decided to just let go, it vanished, faster than a snapping finger. But it felt like bugs were eating through my brain. The daylight was unbearable. I shot out of bed, still struggling to catch my breath. I ran into my mother's room, whispering and trying to explain to her that I had just been murdered. She calmed me down and told her about how bad my head hurt. She allowed me to stay home and lay in bed with her and blacked out the room with dark curtains. I couldn't sleep because of the fear of waking up to that again, not to mention the migraine. She soon fell asleep, and even sooner after that, I heard scratching from the hallway where my room was. It was getting closer. It sounded like fingernails on the wall. When it got to the door of her room, it stopped. A few moments later I heard him, like he was in my head or right next to both ears. Put the pillow over her head and kill her. She can't do anything when she's asleep. Just murder her. Make it so she won't breathe. His voice, to say the least, was paralyzing. I kept saying no, and that she's my mum and that I love her. He didn't let up though. It seemed like hours. She finally woke up and again, gone. Just not there anymore. The heavy feeling in the room was just gone, like that I tried to tell her, and I could see the fear in her eyes, but she just said it was just the headache. Fast forward a few weeks. I ended up moving my bed so I couldn't look at the door, and upon trying to fall asleep, I saw this white kind of breathing blur in the place my bed was where I was shot. I wasn't scared though. The next day, I told my mum that there was a man in my room. She didn't believe me. I thought I was losing it, but this continued for months. Mind you, I had no attacks after the appearance of this man as well. Within this time period, one of my cats had passed after my mother accidentally ran over its back legs, and my dad had put him down. The same night that we buried him, the man in my room was holding him and stroking him. I called my mom into the room, bawling my eyes out, trying to tell her that the man has a baby kitty and that the baby kitty is all right. My mum broke down crying and hugged me so tightly, the best hug she's ever given me to this day, and asked me to describe the man. And I thought, finally. So I told her that he was wearing a trucker hat with a dirty flannel t-shirt and ripped blue jeans. She asked me if he ever spoke to me, and I told her no. I told her he's not like the man who killed me, and that I wasn't afraid of him, that I talked to him, and he listened. Fast forward a few more weeks. Stranger things started happening to me. Every night, I would try and talk to the man. My dad's grandfather clock would toll at off hours, like 2:36 a.m. I knew that wasn't right. Something made me want to check it out. But the moment my eyes looked at the clock, poof, the toll would just stop mid-chime, like it was never there. Confused, I went back to my room to try and sleep. Another night, it was about 3 a.m, and I was on the computer in the kitchen. I was on my favourite site at the time, stickdeath.com. My dog, Lady, was beside me, but she kept nudging my leg and leaving. I would then call her back, and she would do the same thing with her ears down and her tail between her legs. This happened quite a few times before I started to feel that same thick feeling that I did in my mother's room. I was terrified. In surround sound in both ears, I heard that voice. "Hey, kid." I was frozen. I called Lady one more time, and she looked at me like, "Oh, now you get it." And we both ran for our lives. As I ran to my room, I felt like the ground beneath me was breaking apart, but I was just out of the reach of the cold grasp of death. I slammed my door shut, and Lady and I hid under the covers until we saw the light of day. Fast forward a few more days. My mum's dad had died before I was born, and my grandmother remarried. I never knew this though. My mother found an old picture of him from when she was just a girl, and decided to put it on the fridge. I was getting ready for school, and she was about to grab the milk when my eyes got wide. "Mum? That's the guy in my room." She broke down and started to cry. I tried to comfort her before she told me why my middle name was David. My mystery was finally solved, but after that I didn't see him anymore. To this day, I believe that my grandfather had been protecting me from something that had attached itself to me. I still get the migraines and usually feel the dark presence, but I haven't heard that voice since that night in the kitchen, and I really hope I get a chance to confront the bastard. I have a few words for it, but either way, I never got the chance to thank you, Gramps. come visit sometime. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed these creepy tales tonight. Don't forget that I do post every night, so be sure to hit the bell icon, subscribe, and leave a like and comment with your thoughts. As I did mention at the start, the first story that I read, the one about the mother killing her 3 children, me and Briefcase have teamed up to make an extra special video dedicated to that one case. After reading it when it was submitted to me, I really looked into it, and he and I decided that it needed extra detail. So I really hope you check it out. It's seriously good and truly worth your time, all narrated by me for this very special video. So carry on your evening with a little bit extra more. I'll see you soon.